All right, for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to the McMullen Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency's, or MAGSA's, NRCS EQIP application webinar. We are so excited that you have joined us and for our great group of panelists who are here with us today, who you will meet in just a moment. But first, I just want to go through a few Zoom logistical items. If you have noticed your video and microphone is off, participants will not have their video or microphones on throughout this webinar. If you have any difficulties with Zoom, please send your questions in the chat and we will assist you as soon as possible. As far as questions and answers related to the content of this webinar, you can submit those questions through the Q&A feature, which I will go through in more detail on the next slide. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the MAGSA website and will be emailed to those who have registered or attended this webinar. As I mentioned, there's a Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you have questions regarding the presentation materials, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, type your question or comment in the Q&A window, and click send. Our group of panelists will address these questions at the end of the webinar. So don't worry, after each presentation, we will be going to a new presentation, but we will not forget your questions. They will be addressed at the end of the webinar. So go ahead and type them as you're thinking about them, submit them, and we will address them. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our fearless leader, Matt Hurley, to introduce the team.
Good afternoon to the panelists once again and our 40 participants for the webinar this afternoon. I'm very, very happy to see that number 40 jump on there. We're glad to have a very good turnout for this. It's really important information, and I'm really happy that we have so many people tuning in. I am Matt Hurley. I'm the General Manager of the McMullen Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Most of you have received this invitation as landowners within the agency, but we'll go over who's qualified for some of these things in a few minutes. Just wanted to give you a good welcome and hand you back to our two outreach specialists who are nothing short of miraculous in their ability to get things done. So Ashley, back to you.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Ashley Goldsmith and I'm with Blue Chair Communications and I am on the MAGSA outreach team.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Becca Quist. I'm with Provo and Pritchard Consulting Group, and I have the lucky fortune of being Ashley's teammate. I get to work on MAGSA outreach and engagement as well.
My name is Russ Friend, the County Executive Director of the Farm Service Agency for Fresno County.
My name is Blair Bain. I'm the San Joaquin Valley Team Engineer, providing engineering support on this MAGSA opportunity, as well as I support office.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Kazi. I'm a soil conservationist at the Fresno field office. I'll likely be your primary point of contact if you apply for this program.
All right, all I have to do is figure out how to work this thing. I made my screen too big for myself. Anyway, back to me, Matt Hurley again. Let me go over a couple things relative to McMullen Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Of course, we call it MAGSA for short. There's a chart on your graphic here that shows the red line, which is the outside boundary of the McMullen Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency. It's about 120,000 acres on the west of Kerman, on the western central portion of Fresno County. It's one of the 7 GSAs in the Kings Subbasin, and of most important note is the fact that it is charged, or the landowners within that red boundary are charged with retiring approximately 91,000 acre-feet of annual groundwater overdraft over the next 20 years. One question that's come up recently is, am I in MAGSA? You are likely in MAGSA if you received a postcard in the mail. But if you're unsure, if you're on the edge, you can either call the MAGSA office. You can check your property tax bill and see if McMullen area groundwater is included as one of the additional charges there. Of course, every landowner within MAGSA is paying a $19 per acre charge to assist in the financing of groundwater sustainability. And I understand there also are DWR and KRCD, Kings River Conservation District, websites that you can look up your own address and it will tell you which GSA you're in. So if there's any doubt, if you're on that edge, if you're straddling the edge, go ahead and check on those locations and it will tell you where you are and whether you'll be qualified for these tremendous opportunities that we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. Today, we're going to talk about not only $1 million funding pool, it's $1 million per year over the next 4 years for MAGSA landowners, specifically through the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS, and the USDA, of course, and the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Initiative, with a target towards the EQIP, or Environmental Quality Incentives Program funds. It's a tremendous opportunity in general for MAGSA landowners to do efficient upgrades to their existing operations. But most importantly, as you see in the green there, it's an opportunity for you to meet, you as a landowner, to meet the obligation of putting electromagnetic meters and telemetry on your meters on your wells by 2025. The sooner the better. The more information we can gather, the better we're going to manage that resource. To be eligible, bottom line is you need to own or lease or manage your land and have an average gross income of $900,000 or less. That does limit some folks because they are operations that are larger than that, but we are actively pursuing additional grant opportunities to the Bureau. We have, in fact, we just submitted a water and energy efficiency grant to the Bureau asking for additional dollars to help with the financing of our meters and telemetry. Last but not least, at the bottom there, you'll need to get enrolled with the USDA's Farm Service Agency, which you'll hear about momentarily, prior to being actually eligible to speak with the NRCS about the EQIP Water Smart funding. So the reason you're here today is to find out some of the details about that. I can assure you that these two ladies in our outreach are going to be always available and are going to do a great job of giving you additional opportunities to sit with NRCS folks and them and myself and whoever else needs to help you put together great qualifying projects for this program. Next slide, please. First up, again, focusing on that Farm Service Agency requirement is Russ Friend, who is the County Executive Director. He introduced himself prior, but Russ, take it away.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Good morning. The USDA Farm Service Agency and NRCS offices are co-located at the Jennifer Street location where we've been for decades. You can see the address there. If you want to reach the Farm Service Agency, it's the 276-7494 extension number 2. If you want to reach NRCS, same number, but their extension is number 3. Next slide. One of the things you're going to have to do, if you haven't done so already, is to establish records with the Farm Service Agency so that NRCS can then tap into our system and move information over to their system. So one of the things we're going to talk about is your business structure and how you apply for benefits under your business structure. But if you have questions, please contact the Fresno County Farm Service Agency if we're your county office, or whatever your county office, your FSA county office is, and they can help you specifically. Next slide. So the business structure, what we're going to talk about now, if you've never been in our system before, you've never received payments from FSA or NRCS, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to file an AD 2047 form, which basically is just a name and address, social security number, tax identification number, type of business structure that you are, so that we can add you to our database. If you are farming as an individual, then you would file a form 902 for individuals. If you're farming as an entity, such as a corporation, LLC, limited partnership, general partnership, trust, anything like that, you would file the 902 for an entity. Those forms are available through the FSA office. We can help you fill them out. It's not difficult, but you will need certain information to fill those forms out if you are more than an individual. For example, if you're a corporation, an LLC, a limited partnership, or a general partnership, we're going to need to know who your members are, who the partners are, their addresses, their social security numbers, and all of that sort of thing. But we can help you determine who you need to get that information from to provide to us. You're also going to have to provide an LLC membership agreement, corporation docs, trust docs, your general partnership agreement or your limited partnership agreement. If you are any of those types of companies, they need to be signed, not just a PDF copy of your documentation before you send them out for signatures. Next slide, please. You're also going to need to file the adjusted gross income form, which many of you who have participated in the past are aware of. If you're an individual farmer, you're going to file it for your social security number. If you're a trust, a corporation, LLC, or some sort of entity, you're going to file the form for the entity and for all of the partners, members, beneficiaries, whatever the type of entity you have, all the people inside, they're going to have to file it for themselves using their social security numbers and their addresses. These forms are sent to the IRS and the IRS does validate them. In addition, you're going to provide a form SF3881 for FSA. NRCS has a different number, but the bottom line is you're going to need to provide a voided business check. USDA does not send checks in the mail anymore. We send everything by direct deposit. It's much faster, it's much safer. You're not going to get your mailbox robbed. So we need a copy of that voided business check or personal check so that we can make sure that we have the proper banking information to attach to the direct deposit. Next slide, please. You're also going to have to establish your farmland if you haven't previously done so. By that, I mean you're going to have to tell us where your farm is located. You're going to have to give us a grant deed or your property tax bill. It's going to have some sort of legal description on it, hopefully an APN number. And then we will add that to your farm and you'll receive a farm number from FSA, and that's the number that NRCS will be using for their programs. If you don't own the ground, if you lease the ground, you have a long-term lease, then you're going to need a copy of that lease signed by the landlord and signed by the operator. Again, not just the unsigned leases. We have to have them signed. And then finally, you're going to have to submit the AD 1026 highly erodible land conservation form, which many of you are familiar with. If not, we can talk about that form when you come into the office or when you contact us for the various types of forms that we can send you. The FSA office is open to customers. NRCS office is open to customers. So you can come into the office and we can help you gather this information, or you can email me and I can send it to you by email, whichever is easier. Next slide. Again, our address is behind the Costco on Shaw Avenue near Highway 99. There's our extension number 2 if you want to reach FSA, number 3 if you want to reach NRCS. My email is there. You can also send it to Chris San Nicolas, who works in my office. Many of you know Chris. You can send it to her and we can get you squared away. Next slide. That's it that I have, and we'll take questions at the end of the session. Next, I'd like to introduce Blair, who's going to be talking about the NRCS portion.
Thank you, Russ. Again, my name's Blair Bain, San Joaquin Valley team engineer. There will be a local field office engineer that's going to provide local support with Michael and Russ on that other side with FSA to work through your application. Next slide, please. So I'll give you a little bit of background on how we got here. So Bureau of Reclamation has Water Smart grants available to water authorities to support Straits tribes, local entities to implement actions to increase water supply and resiliency through modernizing existing infrastructure. So some of the examples is capacity, storage, conveyance, addressing system losses so we can be more efficient in getting that water out to the customers. At the bottom of this slide, you'll see there is a link if you had the interest in looking at what BOR offers. Again, these are solicited by the management agencies. And what we're going to talk about later is how you have access, which is the landscape conservation initiative that we have in partnership with BOR with NRCS. Next slide, please. So some of the grants, a short list, most of the ones that have been awarded in the San Joaquin Valley to water authorities is water and energy efficiency grants, water marketing strategies, small scale water efficiency projects, and drought response programs. There are others available. Again, the link that I provided on the previous slide will help you get more familiar with what opportunities are out there and seeing if there's some of these opportunities to partner with us later on are available. Next slide, please. So let's go over what this partnership is that we have with MAGSA. They were awarded Water Smart grant money in 2020 for the groundwater well monitoring project. So as Matt had spoke about, they had $1 million for 5 years. And last year was the first year. So we've exhausted those monies. We were able to get that implemented and out to the people. So you'll see that the spectrum is until 2022. Projection is trying to get 1,000 acres per year enrolled in the program. And we're looking to grow this. So we're trying to meet these goals. So after 2026, that we can come back and put in another proposal to continue with this to support Sigma and all the challenges that you're faced with. Next slide, please. So just a brief coverage of some of the practices that are available. Some of you may be aware of these, some may not. So a lot of conversion from flood to a more efficient irrigation delivery system, if it's micro sprinklers, sprayers, drip, replacing old leaky concrete flood lines. If you're irrigating through a ditch, closing those up so we can get rid of any evaporative or seepage losses. As Matt had mentioned, flow meters are available. Irrigation water management, which is soil moisture monitoring, manage that water in the root zone for plant uptake. Irrigation pumps, boosters to provide pressure for efficiency in these pressurized systems, or interties to the district to move water over to your field to make better utilization of that water. Just a side note, it's not for well pumps. There are other practices, is not a comprehensive list. I just put some out there that are really highly solicited practices, but there are agronomic practices, soil health, and air quality and such. Next slide, please. So just to define this acronym EQIP, so it's Environmental Qualities Incentive Program. It's really our biggest financial assistance cost share program. It provides financial and technical assistance for us to help you as agricultural producers to address natural resource concerns. So the suite of all those concerns is SWAPA, which stands for soil, water, air, plants, animals, energy, and humans. It's a voluntary program that helps producers make conservation work for them. So again, we can provide technical service with this, just helping you with our specialties to help you figure out what alternatives work best for you, and then financial resources, as we're speaking about here, to implement improvements, which we call NRCS conservation practices. You can voluntarily implement these practices, and NRCS co-invests in these practices with you. Next slide. At this time, I'm going to hand it off to Michael Kazi, the local contact there in Fresno for this initiative. And go ahead, Michael.
Thanks for that, Blair. So again, I'm Michael Kazi. I'm a soil conservationist at the Fresno field office. And I would like to apologize in advance if you hear any background noise. We are an active and open to the public office, and so there's lots of conservation going on in the background. So here is a broad overview of NRCS application timeline. The next slide. Perfect. All right. So if there's one thing you take from this presentation, it's to please register your land with the Farm Service Agency. You absolutely must register your land with FSA, or NRCS will not be able to create a conservation plan for your land. So again, the first step is to register with FSA. Just give them a call and the wonderful folks over there will walk you through the process. Once you've registered your land, contact us at the NRCS Fresno field office. You can come in person, no appointments are necessary, or you can call the number provided. If you call by phone, tell us a bit about what projects you're interested in. We'll tell you a little bit more about that program, and we'll also set a date for you to conduct a site visit and walk the land with you. We'll also help you fill out the application during that site visit. If you come in person, same type of thing, tell us about what you're interested in, and we'll help you fill out the application packet in person, and then we'll also set up a time for the site visit. And the application packet is as follows. The application itself, the adjusted gross income form, the direct deposit form, and irrigation history form. I understand that a few of those forms are overlap with FSA's requirements. We just make sure that all the forms are in and you won't have to double file them. But it is important to let us know what your operation is like, and so we make sure we have the correct form for you. For example, if you're leasing the land and want to build a structure using NRCS funds, we may have an additional form for you to fill out. So it's really important to tell us how you're operating the land and what you're interested in doing. And after we have this application packet, we set up a site visit, and then we will plan, rank, and assess your application, as well as submit the project for funding. The project will be ranked according to what resource concerns you are addressing and what type of conservation practices you will be doing. We do get asked this all the time, and I want to remind everyone, NRCS does not rank applications based on farm size or income. Again, the ranking is done based on the current level of management and what resource concerns you'll be addressing by implementing the conservation practices. Applications that rank the highest will be selected and will go down the list until we run out of money. All right. And so here are a few helpful hints to make the application process go a bit more smoothly. Again, if you're leasing your land, please have a lease agreement, a signed lease agreement between the landowner and the land operator that shows that the person operating the land has control of the land for at least 5 years in the future. Please use a consistent name across all your forms, regardless if you're applying as an individual, an LLC, or trust. If you're using your middle name on one of the forms, please use it on all the forms. Again, for the address, please use the same address on all the forms. All signatures must be a wet signature and must be signed with a hand and a pen. They cannot be signed electronically. The same goes for the date. And also we need to make sure that we get a voided check to ensure we know where to send the money to if you get selected for funding. All right, next slide. Okay, so as of yet, we don't have an official timeline for next year's application funding period. However, based on last year, we can infer that this fiscal year's application deadline will be around December 2022. We'll likely select applications by February 2023, and NRCS will be getting your final signature to finalize a contract likely around March or April 2023. I do understand this timeline may not be ideal, but please keep in mind that it will be around 6 months from the time you submit your application to the time you know if you've been selected. So please keep this in mind in terms of how your operation operates and if we would be able to work within that timeline. Last year, we had 2 windows for funding. These windows are called batching periods. However, we do not know how many batching periods we will have for this fiscal year. Your best bet is to reach out to us in late September or early October when we are likely to have that information. And here is our contact info.
All right, Matt, I think you're up with our final reminders.
Well, these are the final reminders, and I want to first of all stop and and thank our presenters so far. These are great folks. They have a great opportunity for us here, and they have shown nothing but willingness to make this all possible for our landowners. So I did want to make sure that they're properly acknowledged for that. They're going to be around some more. First and foremost, reminder, of course, that they've said it, I've said it, that Farm Service Agency registration is critical, because when the NRCS folks go into the database to try to find you to do an EQIP application, if they can't find you, that means you're probably not in the system. So you got to be in that Farm Service Agency system. Number one, first, get it done as quick as you can, get it out of the way. It's a one-timer. Once you're in, you're in. We're going to have an application guide that's going to be coming out. We'll have that on the website. Obviously want to continue to look on the MAGSA website for all kinds of updates on this and other materials coming through. And then more importantly, it hasn't been mentioned yet, but kind of coincident with Michael's timeline schedule there, we are going to be setting up some Fridays in October, we're calling them, drop-off events where once your application is effectively in draft, almost final form, we'll be able to sit down with NRCS representatives and go over that application, make sure we dot the I's, cross the T's, get it in compliant condition before we either leave it with them to take in or come back a following week and get that finished up. Just want to make sure that everybody knows there's no urgency, but when there's no urgency, there's always a tendency to put off. I've noticed an awful lot of people doing their taxes on April 15th. So let's don't do that. Let's get all this stuff done as quick as we can and get it in. With that, I think we would like to go to some questions and answers. We will stay just as long as you have questions. There's no such thing as a dumb one. Feel free to send them in now, or if we can't answer it now, I'm sure that one of the presenters or myself will be happy to check it for you and get back with you. So maybe I'll hand it back over to Ashley and Becca and see what kind of questions we have in the Q&A, which looks like we have 4 or 5.
Thank you, Matt. Now is a great time to submit your questions in the Q&A, and we are going to go through them one by one. I see a question from Oz, who says, what about an annual subscription for irrigation technology? And
Michael, Michael, would you like to address that or myself?
Why don't you get that one?
Okay, so what I'm guessing you're speaking about, what I've seen is for soil moisture monitoring equipment, that's typically a cell or web-based platform that you log into a cloud to be able to access this data if it's a telemetry-based system. If so, we do pay money for the management. It is a management practice. So what it does is it gives you money to be able to do the management. So you can allocate that money as you see fit to establish the technology of which that practice requires. And it's a 1-year practice. And then at the end of that practice is when you would get paid when you've done the management. We consult with you. Either you have a third party that's doing it, or we sit down and help you understand how to use that tool in conjunction with your irrigation system. But there is no money specifically just for a service. It's to do the management. So there's different ways of doing it. You can do it like, again, with technology, or just a lower tech alternative where you're having to manually download and transform this data into a graphical approach to make decisions. If you had some other question, part of the question need to be addressed, just type it again and we can get down to the details if that didn't suffice.
thank you, Blair. I would like to say that if you are calling in and you're unable to type your question in the Q&A chat, please feel free to raise your hand and I will do my best to unmute you so that you can say your question out loud. But next in the chat, we have a question from Sarah, who asks, if FSA has 941 and 1199 forms, we can just indicate that so you can find them in the system.
Ashley, this is Russ. I'll take that question. So if FSA has the 941, which is the adjusted gross income form, then we can let NRCS know that. That's not a problem. Keep in mind that this is a 2023 program, and you're going to have a 2023 AGI. AGIs are year specific. Secondly, the 1199 form references the direct deposit. So if we have our form and the canceled, the voided check, we can provide that to NRCS.
Thank you, Russ. Marjorie asks, can I start the application process before October?
Again, I'll start with this. This is Russ again. You can definitely come into the FSA office if you have not established your land or done any other FSA work. You can do that at any time. And then I'll let them take the question on whether or not they'll take applications after FSA work.
Yeah, this is Michael. So you can apply with us at any time. If you want to apply for this program today, you could. It is just easier for us, for both parties actually, to have everything together at once. And since we do have year-specific forms, such as the AGI, that do start at the beginning of the fiscal year, which is in October, we highly recommend applying in October, so we reduce the amount of back and forth of, hey, can you get this form to me? We still don't have it yet. Or, hey, we got an updated application form. Can you fill this out instead of the other one that you filled out? So just to kind of reduce the repetitive nature of it, we do recommend applying all at once with all the application materials in October at the start of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Michael. Greg asks, if selected or awarded, how long will we have to install projects and spend the grant funding?
I can take that one too. Depending on the contract, for this contract, it will typically be 1 year from signing that contract to install the practices. If for some reason there's financial difficulties or inclement weather or supply chain issues, let us know and we can modify the contract to extend it. But it is typically a year to implement the conservation practice. And once you do implement the practice, we come and verify that it was done according to our specs, and then we can issue the payment.
Great. John and David are asking a similar question about income limitations relating to the Water Smart grant funding. They're asking, are large entities restricted? Is there an income limitation to participate?
So I'm going to take, this is Russ at Farm Service Agency. I'm going to take the first part of that. In order to determine whether or not you are eligible income-wise, you have to file the 941 form. The 941 form asks a specific question: is your adjusted gross income more or less than 900,000? If you say the income is more than 900,000, then you're excluded from the EQIP program. If it's less than 900,000, then you meet all the other eligibility requirements, then you could participate.
Great, thank you.
And just to add to that, as I indicated once before, McMullen is not only focusing on just this program, certainly for those who do qualify and have the adjusted gross income of less than 900,000 and otherwise meet the requirements, as Russ said. This is certainly an opportunity that shouldn't be missed. But we are also, we just submitted, as a matter of fact, an application for the Bureau of Reclamation Water and Energy Efficiency Grant, which would be targeted towards getting some shared financing for up to 925 additional well locations. It will not be for other NRCS practices, but it will be targeted more towards the electromagnetic wells, the telemetry, and the data management services.
Thanks, Matt. Paul asks, what types of practices require engineered designs? When are those plans for the practices submitted?
This is Blair. I'll take that. So any structural component, we usually want a drawing and estimate for it. There's a couple reasons. The drawing lets us know how it ties into the system. So what's your existing management system infrastructure? How does it logically tie in? and how is it going to improve your current management or facilitation of irrigation, whatever it is. So we understand the benchmark conditions, how it's going to improve. We know where in the field it is because we have to do site evaluations for suitability and feasibility. Also, we understand what the practice is. So we know with our conservation practices how it fits, and we have a cost share unit rate that we pay for these, and they're all different. So we know, hey, what is the cost share amount or financial assistance that we're going to be able to provide. Also, with the estimate, it helps add clarity to that drawing, and it also helps you understand what the cost is to do this work. Typically that would be known over the 6 months, but since COVID and supply chain issues, it could be a day-to-day volatility. So it's any engineering practice. Typically we request some type of drawing. It doesn't have to always be an engineer designed one, but it has to be like a plan view of a location showing where it is and all the existing infrastructures tying in, and other stuff we may need, like what's the flow rate for a pipe, or size, diameter pipe for the flow meter and such.
Thank you, Blair. Sarah asks, what are the per farm limits of funding?
Yeah, I can take this one. So for EQIP, this is part of the EQIP funding. It is $450,000 of caps. So this is for the EQIP funding for the entire farm bill, which I believe was 2018. So to summarize, if you've been receiving funding from NRCS since the 2018 farm bill for various projects, and you have exceeded, or you are at 450K, you are not eligible. But if you have received less than 450K in projects, you are eligible. The current project you have cannot exceed 450K of the accumulated projects that you've done since 2018 with NRCS.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. Patricia asks, if there are 3 equal co-owners, is the limitation 900,000 per co-owner, related to the gross income question?
This is Russ with Farm Service Agency. So the first question I would ask is, what is the entity type? If the entity is a general partnership, then each of the partners would also have to meet the $900,000 requirement on their own. If by chance 2 of them met it and 1 of them did not, then the payment would be reduced by the 1/3 person who did not meet it. If the entity type is a trust, limited liability company, corporation, LLC, that entity type, first of all, has to meet the 900,000. If the entity type does not meet the 900,000, we stop there and you're not eligible. Once the entity type has met the 900,000, then again, we go inside and look at the members, the stockholders, whatever the people are that are inside your entity, and each of them, again, would have to meet the 900,000 on an individual basis. And if their particular share, if that particular person could not meet it, their share would not be paid.
Thank you. I believe this question was partially answered in response to a previous question, but I will ask it in case there's further clarification necessary. Sarah asks, does participation in other programs affect funds available through EQIP?
Yeah, I can help answer this. It depends. If you're applying through the state for the same practice, for example, if you're applying through the state CDFA sweep program for drip irrigation, and you're also applying through NRCS for drip irrigation, you cannot double dip and take money from both for the same practice. If you're selected in both, you have to choose one program or the other to receive the funding from. So you can apply to both. We actually encourage you to apply to any sources of funding that you find. However, if you are selected for an alternative source of funding and you decide to go with that, you do need to let us know, as you will no longer then be eligible for our program for that particular practice.
Thank you, Mike.
I'd
Lori,
like to just follow up a little bit. Yeah, so in the policy, you can't have federal funds matched on the same component or same structure. Now, if there's complementing practices, you can do that. It just can't be on the same exact component. Just want to add a little clarity.
thank you, Blair. All right, Lori asks, what tax years are required for the 2023 application for AGI limitations?
This is Russ with FSA. I'll take that question. The years that we would look at for the 2023 AGI would be your tax year 19, 20, and 21. We look at those 3 years and we look at an average of those 3 years.
Thank you, Russ. Matt, this one's specifically for you. Is there Fresno State grant funding available for well monitoring or metering?
Hi, Jeannie. Glad you're aboard for this guy. Fresno State grant funding, the grant we're working on with them right now does not cover the well monitoring or metering, but as I said before, the Bureau application we just made is for $2.8 million towards partially funding a match for well metering, telemetry, and monitoring for a full year. So that's where we focus most of our attention. As a backup, we have another Bureau of Reclamation drought grant pending that we're waiting almost any day now for results on. That also is towards metering and monitoring. So Fresno State, no, but lots of other possibilities that we keep putting our name in the hat for. And it looks like Michael might even have an answer for that. I don't know.
I actually wanted to clarify a previous
Okay.
previous comment I made regarding EQIP and caps. So in terms of the 450,000 cap per individual, this is different for general partnerships and for joint ventures. For example, for a joint venture, each individual has a limit of 450,000. So as a whole, that joint venture has a $900,000 cap. If it's a general partnership and you have multiple owners, again, each individual has a $450,000 cap on there. So you get $450,000 per partner in a general partnership. But the Social Security, the SSN has to be under 450,000 for the actual entity.
Thank you for that clarification, Michael. Paul is asking Matt, is the Fresno State question that Jeannie asked referring to the pump efficiency program?
All it is not. Our current Fresno State grant has to do with efficiency and use of cropping patterns for determining water usage on our given fields here in McMullen. We've done a complete survey of all the crops, at least through last year, and we've come up with some rough numbers, and we're going to use the results of that research to cross-reference our metering program as we go forward to see just how far off or how close they are relative to water usage as a methodology.
Paul's got it. Great. You guys have been asking some excellent questions. We have gone through all of the questions in the Q&A, but we will leave a few more minutes to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions that were not addressed or that come to your mind. So we'll be here.
don't feel bad. We've done this kind of thing before, and it's amazing how about 5 minutes goes by and questions start popping up. So once again, no such thing as a dumb question. If something comes to your mind, feel free to put it in, or give the office a call, or the folks at the agencies a call at the numbers that are up on the screen right now, and we'll try to help you after hours if that's of service.
And I would like to remind everyone that we will be emailing this presentation out to all of the webinar participants and registrants, and it will also be available on the MAGSA website. So if there are any links that you want to click on or contact information you didn't write down, don't worry, we'll send this to you.
And that's a good fill in there, because I just got a guy who walked in the front door asking questions about this program with his postcard in hand. And I told him, you missed the seminar, but I think, or the webinar, but it's going to be up on the website. So I directed him to the website to take a look at it. And that's where you can go back and certainly jot down all these numbers and emails and links and all those kind of things as necessary to get additional information if you need it. And by the way, we've talked about quite a few of the conservation practices for the NRCS and under the EQIP program, but there are a large number of conservation practices. And so unless I'm saying something that's completely out of school, I know that the NRCS and FSA, like for, using multiple conservation practices in your applications for your projects. It's a beneficial, way to apply.
We'll hang out here until 12:50. And if you guys don't have any questions right now, feel free to email them our way or give Matt a call, give the NRCS Fresno field office a call. And we'd like to remind you that in October, we're having those Friday events, drop-off events, where before then we would strongly encourage you to have gotten into the Farm Service Agency, completed that part, and then in October you can come to likely the Kerman Community Center on the Fridays in October, and we will be there to assist you with your application process, and you can drop them off there so you don't have to drive all the way to Fresno. So keep that in mind. The first step is to get in the Farm Service Agency, and then we will be in Kerman during October to take your Water Smart EQIP applications.
And before
Matt.
before this girl speaks again, because when she speaks, it's like manna from heaven. But both of them did an excellent job. I would say, even though they can't hear you, that all the remaining folks should give them a ripple, which I do. And also the panelists, Blair, Russ, and Michael, absolutely appreciate your time and your energy. And hopefully we'll be able to get some very qualified applications in front of you. And look at that, Paul thought something. He beat the buzzer. So let's see what Paul has to say.
Before I read Paul's question, Becca, did you want to jump in and say something?
Oh, I just wanted to mention, there's a link on the current slide right now. If there is anyone who's attending the webinar and it's not signed up for the McMullen email updates list, make sure that you go and sign up at that link, mcmullenarea.org/email. We're going to be sending more information, including an upcoming application guide that will, hopefully provide what was, given today in the presentations, and kind of a takeaway form that you can print out and go through, as well as just other reminders and updates along the next few months in regards to what you should be doing and when. So, pushing more FSA over this next month, and then when you should be really looking into NRCS application. So we want to be here to guide you, and we're going to be using that email list to do so. So make sure if you're not already, get on that list.
That's great. I think Paul's question is really more of a comment. He says, in addition to NRCS EQIP, the American Farmland Trust California region is offering funding for irrigation efficiency practices. Thanks, Paul. Jeannie asks, can EQIP grant support access to water along phase 2 canal for recharge?
This is Blair. I'll take that one. So recharge, we understand part of Sigma is trying to mitigate groundwater overdraft. So California NRCS is put together some interim practices for recharge, one being recharge basin or trench, the other being on-farm recharge. In kind of like what the RCPP and what Don Cameron has done out at his place, in partnership with Sustainable Conservation, we are piloting these practices in targeted areas in conjunction with the water authorities to recharge winter flood release water. So not waters that are already allocated or spoken for in legal law. We're talking about excess waters and trying to get that in the winter when you have a big slug of water coming through. So there is opportunity. It is being managed. I'm part of that here locally, but with the state office to find districts that are willing to do it. And through that, kind of how Matt Hurley has found participants in his GSA area, we're trying to find people within a district boundary that they have targeted, have access to their system, can receive it, and they'd be willing to deliver that water. So there are some opportunities. I can't tell you exactly what locations are going to be out there. We only had a few specific ones in Tulare, down in Delano, Early March, so bordering Tulare and Kern counties, and up in Madera. So we're looking to expand it, but it is a pilot. So what we're needing to do is get information together on the efficacy of these practices, because we're looking to make these permanent practices with standards. We have to submit this data up to the national office for review and acceptance. So we're looking to expand it, and it's targeted. So there are some opportunities, but I can't tell you any more than that right now, but we are looking to grow that over the next 2 to 3 years. We're trying to do this pilot to be able to gather enough information to be able to submit and have some permanent practices that we can use specifically for recharge.
Blair, I have to tell you that Jeannie is one of our shining star landowners who is participating in our expansion project through the RCPP and the EQIP associated with that RCPP, and she knows to ask the right questions, and we are going to get her every bit of money we can get her through every possibility we can find for her, and that's our promise. And she always likes to get confirmation. And what you said couldn't have been said any better, because we're going to keep pushing until we get the max amount of money on that on-farm recharge for sure.
Fantastic.
Look at that. We're already up to 12:55. A few more questions trickled in, and you have 5 more minutes to submit your final burning questions.
Either that or I'm going to go get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before the lunch hour is over.
Hey, Ashley, I see that someone has their hand raised, one of the attendees.
Thank you. Give me 1 moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can more easily address the attendees. Okay, Joseph, I believe this is you. I'm going to allow you to unmute your microphone.
Okay, I think you got me now, right?
Yes.
Excellent. This question is for Blair, and it's Blair. You've been out to Fresno State where we're doing that research on that subsurface virtual water table. Will that be able to, can we apply that to the grants?
Specifically for that, I would say the guidance I gave you before is that it kind of depends, because since we have a pilot and we have a drafted standard, I don't believe what you have right now is meeting that, but that doesn't mean that we can't move forward. I think the best avenue would be the Conservation Innovation Grant, which is where you're trying to tell us, hey, NRCS, there's all these practices you have that are great, but I have a different technology or approach that I think would benefit us. And through that grant process is kind of like we're doing with these practices in-houses, you would have that pilot, you'd have it established, there would be documentation gathered, submitted, reviewed, and then NRCS would say, hey, we see this as a benefit. Here's the resources, concerns addressed, here's X, Y, and Z. And then they either group it in with the current practice or create a new conservation practice to envelop what that is, and then build a unit cost share rate based on a typical size of field and such. So the reason I say that is we've had basins down in Kern County that they solely only recharge through reverse tile drains below the root zone. And at this time for the pilot, the state conservation engineer did not see that as the best suited for the pilot because of the recharge rate. There's a lot of different variables. So it doesn't mean that it can't. And I appreciate your question, and you can press us to try as we work through this, as if we can envelop or grow this. But as it currently stands, the subsurface recharge has some issues with state regulatory, I think, trying to meet water quality concerns, making sure that parameters or criteria hasn't been lined out in there. So I think there's an opportunity there, but as it currently stands off of this year, it would not happen. But I would ask you to try and look at the conservation innovation grants, nationally and state led, to see if you can be supported to get that information compiled, because I know you have it out at Fresno State on that test plot and some other fields that you're working on. But I think we can have an ongoing discussion to figure out how that's moving forward.
Okay, and that would also go with the not only the recharge aspect, but on the conservation, irrigation conservation would both.
Correct. Yeah, because there's exactly, you're going to line out the mutual benefits of being able to recharge below the root zone, but also irrigating the crop, reducing evaporative losses, keeping moisture in the root zone, pushing salts, all those different things that you talked about before. There'd be multiple benefits than just one.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, our timing is just about perfect. Thank you to our amazing panelists. As Matt said, we have a great group of people who made time to be here so that we could add as much value as possible to our MAGSA landowners. Thank you to our attendees, and we will be sending this recording out to all of you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Let's go spend $1 million a year for the next 4 years.